Do you believe in ghosts? Let's go one further. Have you ever seen a ghost? Maybe you're sitting alone in a room, concentrating on a book or a screen, and out of the corner of your eye, someone walks by. A shadowy figure. Your heart hitches in your chest. You look up, but nobody's there. You look behind you, no one. Yet you're absolutely sure someone just passed by. Or perhaps you spent the weekend away camping with your friends. Back in the privacy of your home, you're looking through the photos you took when you come across the selfie of the four of you all gathered inside the tent in the middle of the night. Flashlights under your chins for silly effect. Except, when you examine the photograph closer, you notice there aren't 4 people. There are 5. There's another face positioned between you and your best friend. He's looking up at you, his mouth twisted into a sneer. His hand is on your shoulder. Or could it be that you come home late? It's almost midnight. Your partner is visiting their parents and you're all alone. You want to relax a little before you head up to bed. So you turn on the TV and, oh, look, there's an unmarked video sitting there. This has got to be good. You slide it into the VCR and push play. We know what happens next. It's almost Halloween. So let's do something a little spooky. In this episode of Uncanny Japan, let's talk about Japanese ghosts. Specifically, the various kinds of ghosts you might run into while living or visiting Japan. Uncanny Japan is author me, Teresa Matsura, exploring all that is weird from old Japan. Strange superstitions and old wives' tales, cultural oddities and interesting language quirks. These are little treasures I dig up while doing research for my writing, and I want to share them with you here on Uncanny Japan. I hope you like the show. Let me tell you about a new, fun, and absolutely gorgeous game I think you're going to like. The story goes like this. After an unfortunate turn of events, Princess Sakuna is banished to the mysterious Yuurei island near the border between heaven and earth. Here, together with her colorful companions, our princess must make a home by weathering the elements, cultivating the soil, and battling the hordes of demonic beasts that have overrun the island. Princess Sakuna just happens to be the daughter of a harvest goddess and a warrior god. This comes in handy as she farms the land to not only better the lives of the children of man, but also increase her strength and combat abilities. Those will come in handy when she ventures into deep forests, rushing rivers, secret grottos, and a towering volcano to fight the various beasts and monsters, complete quests, and unlock even more options. The game is called Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. It's a refined side-scrolling platform action game inspired by Japanese mythology, but features many unique twists. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin will be available for PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and Windows PCs. In the US, you can get your hands on the game November 10th. In Japan, look out for it on November 12th. And in Europe, November 20th is the big day. Now, if you're a fan of limited editions, the European and US ones will include a full 3-disc soundtrack, as well as a gorgeous 130-page art book. For PS4, you can get a digital deluxe edition, which includes the full soundtrack as well as console themes and avatars. I really can't convey how beautiful and charming the game looks. So if you're intrigued, please go to sakunaofriceandruin.com. Sakuna is spelled Sakuna, of rice and ruin, ruin, and there you can learn more, check out the enchanting graphics, and consider those limited editions. In Japanese, the word for ghost is Yuurei. The first character, yu, means faint or dim, while the second character, rei, means spirit or soul. The idea behind Yuurei goes something like this. All people have reikon, or souls, and when we die, these souls need to be helped to move on to the other side. This is done by proper funeral ceremony and practices. That is an entire episode in and of itself, by the way, Japanese funerals. But back to ghosts. If for some reason a person's reikon doesn't make it across or otherwise gets stuck, then you have a ghost, or a yuurei. Depending on the emotion and the kind of stuckness that occurs, you get a different kind of ghost. This all sounds at least a little familiar, I guess. Now, the act of moving to this other side is called jōbutsu. It means to attain Buddhahood. But in this case, it's not what you think. It doesn't mean someone has spent years in a temple meditating, shedding all their desires and attachments to finally reach satori, or enlightenment, on their deathbed, so that now they can go and hobnob with the other Buddhas. Not exactly. When talking about death and ghosts, jōbutsu just means that when someone dies and the proper ceremonies are performed, that the person will be released from this world and can pass into a more comfortable place, like a Buddhist paradise. Although I often hear people talking about deceased loved ones saying that they've become a Buddha, I believe the feeling, though, is a little different than what we in the West would consider a Buddha or the Buddha. Anyway, I think the first thing I ever heard about ghosts in Japan was from an exchange student when I was studying at my university. He said that the difference between Japanese ghosts and other countries' ghosts is that Japanese ones don't have legs. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think ghosts all over the world have the legless variety, no? That aside, there's actually a bunch of other more interesting characteristics Japanese specters possess. For example, you'll often find Yuurei dressed in an all-white kimono. This is because back during the Edo era, the deceased were dressed in all white before they were buried. Since people didn't normally go around wearing white kimono, if you ever saw an image depicted that way or on stage at, say, a kabuki play, it was a sure bet that this person, or this image, was a Yuurei. You'll also find those white kimonoed ghosts are often wearing a white triangle piece of, it's either cloth or paper, on their foreheads. This is called hitai kakushi, hide the forehead, and it is also part of the funeral attire. While it seems that in Japan women Yuurei are more common, you do come across male ghosts too. They both tend to have long black hair that's all mussed up, pale to bluish skin, and yes, they don't have legs, usually. Okay, let's talk about the different types of ghosts. There are quite a few. I picked a handful of the more common and colorful ones to go into today. Let's start off lighthearted with the shugorei. These are souls that protect you throughout your life, a guardian spirit, so to speak. It's said that every person has at least one shugorei, but some lucky folk have more. It's easy to assume that in Japan it's one's ancestors who act as the guardian spirits, especially since so much attention is spent remembering and making offers to these predecessors. But it isn't always the case. Your guardian spirit or spirits are souls that are similar to yours. They want to help guide you in the right direction or save you when you're in a pinch. There, happy ghosts. Since we started pleasantly, let's continue while getting more and more disturbing as we go along. Number 2, Dobutsure, or animal ghosts. The Shinto religion holds that everything has a spirit, not only humans and rocks and trees, but animals too. Also, Buddhism doesn't differentiate between people souls and animal souls. So both of Japan's main religions are okay with the belief that animals have reikon, souls, and therefore there can be animal ghosts, which is nice. Except when they're not so nice and an animal spirit wants to haunt or possess you. It sounds like foxes and big snakes are often the culprits here. An example of a really bad doubutsurei is kokuri-san, which is a fox spirit. But when I hear the word kokuri-san, I think Japanese Ouija boards and evil spirits that visit them. I need to do an entire show on kokuri-san, but I have to get my nerve up first. Here's something interesting I ran across. Because animals don't understand well the human language, it's difficult to do a cleansing ritual, an oharai, or exorcism to get rid of them. They just don't understand what you're talking about. If you've ever wondered what a poltergeist is called in Japanese, that would be a shugorei. So is the character for noisy, so noisy spirit. Next, we have the Yuurei, the characters for float, play, and spirit in that order. These are floating or wandering ghosts. They are the souls that don't accept their own death. Either they've died suddenly or don't realize they're dead, or they were not psychologically able to accept the fact that they were going to die. They do as their name suggests and float and wander around. I read that it's easy for these type of ghosts to attach themselves to a person, so be careful. If they don't wander so much but stick to a certain area, they're called jibakurei, literally tied to the ground ghosts. So people who have died suddenly through war, accidents, disasters, and again cannot accept the fact that they're dead, but also have some attachment to the spot where they died, are these kinds of ghosts. Some suicides fall into this category. Think haunted houses, hospitals, bridges, lakes, tunnels, where if you just happen to be there at a certain time of night, you might catch sight of them. It's said it can take a matter of days to hundreds of years for these ghosts to eventually realize that they're dead and move on. All right, let's go a little darker now with the yuurei. These are ghosts that possess people. Japan, not being a Christian nation, didn't have the idea of, let's say, the devil possessing a person. The word yuurei, possession, and yuurei, the spirit that does the possessing, wasn't used until after World War II. It's not that there wasn't possession before, though. There were older ways to say someone was possessed or overcome by something other than Satan. Let's say a fox. That one's easy. It's called kitsunetsuki. There's also kami-oroshi, God coming down, kamigakari, God hanging on, and kami-yadori, God taking up residence. Remember that God isn't necessarily the God that we're familiar with in the West. There's the God of smallpox, remember? Which wasn't a good guy by any stretch. Think more powerful entity, perhaps. Okay, now the last two are doozies. The first one is Onyo, or vengeful spirit. These are people who were treated horribly and died a violent death as a result. Overcome with some negative emotion like hate or jealousy, desire or revenge. They can be anything from spurned lovers, driven to suicide, to those who have been tortured and then murdered. Whatever it was, these poor souls contain so much hate and wrath that they are able to remain in this world in order to exact their revenge. They are extremely powerful and are capable of killing or causing their still among the living enemies death. Needless to say, Onyo are extremely dangerous. They might sound familiar too. Onyo are very often the antagonist in J-horror. Have you ever seen the movie The Grudge? Ju-on in Japanese. How about Ring? Well, both Sadako and Kayako are Onyo. Older examples. Remember Oiwa from episode 42, Yotsuya Kaidan, The Ghost of Oiwa? Or Bancho Sarayashiki, Okiku and the Nine Plates in episode 25? These are two very famous Japanese female Yuurei, and they're both Onyo. The final type of ghosts today blew my mind when I first heard about it. This dangerous phenomena is called ikiryo, or living spirit. And what makes them special is that they're not dead. More specifically, they are the spirits of living people who are extremely envious or resentful of another person. We are talking festering, all-encompassing hate or jealousy that causes their soul or part of it to leave their body and torment their enemy. Oftentimes, the person who owns the tormenting spirit isn't even aware that this is happening. And this idea is nothing new. It was part of the plot in the tale of Genji, and has been written about, acted out on stage, and depicted in art in Japan ever since. In some cases, this bundle of emotion appears in some kind of form. For example, it could resemble the person to whom it belongs, or a ball of fire, or even a floating head. But other times it's just completely invisible. Maybe just turning the tormented person's luck bad or making them ill. Here's how I learned about ikiryo. Many years ago, after several years and much difficulty, I was finally able to get pregnant. And when I found out, I wanted to tell everyone. A lot of my friends and family were worried, and I wanted to share the good news. Of course, I told my mother-in-law, but she quickly put the kibosh on me telling anyone else. Her explanation was that until the second trimester started, the baby was still in this delicate, ethereal state, and if I were to go around telling everyone, bragging in a sense, someone who didn't like me, or perhaps they themselves couldn't get pregnant, might get jealous, and that jealousy could very well mix with resentment and a strong spirit and present itself as an ikiryo that would come and hurt the child or cause me to miscarry. Alrighty then. Another example of ikiryo is ushi no kokumairi, which I talked about back in episode 52, putting a curse on your enemies. If you haven't listened to that, it's nice and spooky too. Also, you can see the lengths people go to curse someone. That's some serious dark energy there. So, for all the above-mentioned ghosts, except the guardian spirit, I guess, you can rid yourself of an akuryo, or bad ghost, by getting an oharai. I mentioned it earlier. An oharai is a kind of cleansing ceremony. The person who performs it is actually helping the ghostly spirit to joubutsu suru, to detach from this world and you, or someplace, and to find peace on the other side. And a final interesting thing about vengeful Japanese ghosts, and how you can tell if they're really vengeful Japanese ghosts. They have a cool catchphrase, urameshia. Basically it means, I curse you. A living person would never say this. There's a different way to curse someone if you want to do that. So the word urameshia is only used by angry ghosts. So if you're ever out at night in a dark place and you hear someone spookily calling urameshia, that's probably a good sign that it's time to get an oharai. So that's all for today. Since it's October and Halloween is near, I wanted to do something special for my patrons. You see, I'm old enough to have a lot of weird and scary stuff happen to me throughout the years. There are a couple things, though, that are straight up terrifying, at least to me. one of the stories I've never really talked about before and is a little hair-raising, so I'm going to record it and put it up for my patrons, all levels. I don't particularly like revisiting it, but I do love good story, and this really is a good story, albeit true. I recently talked to my son about it because he was there and kind of witnessed the whole thing. And yeah, he remembers it pretty much the way I do. For the next episode of Uncanny Japan, I think it's going to come out at exactly around Halloween, a little bit before. So what I'm going to do is visit some local haunted spots. I'm not sure if I'm going to do more than one or not, but I'm researching now, so look forward to that. Okay, now it's time to go to sleep. Go on now. Remember to check your closets and to look under your bed. Don't think too much about that wind outside, that creaky gate. Sweet dreams. And remember, if you bolt awake in the middle of the night because you think you've heard a sound, just close your eyes. Don't think about the footsteps coming down the hall or your door slowly opening. Don't pay attention to the movement of your blankets or the icy hand sliding up under the sheets. Keep your eyes closed tight. Is that a putrid breath in your ear? Something brushing against your cheek? She wants you to see her. But whatever you do, don't open your eyes. You've just reached the end of another episode of Uncanny Japan. Perhaps you'd like more. A monthly folktale translated and retold by me. The occasional binaurally mic'd soundscape like the ones you hear on this show. Or recipes, behind the curtain episodes, homemade postcards, and more. If you're interested in that or supporting the show in any way, please search for Uncanny Japan and Patreon. We've got a wonderful group over there. Thank you again for listening, supporting, reviewing, and telling your friends about the show. My name is Teresa Matsura, and I will talk to you again soon.